Welcome back to the Parc Fermé for podcast number 733, the Monaco Grand Prix, or as my friend Paul might call it, the Monaco Grand Prix. No? Okay.
No, Derek Bell would do that.
Fair enough. This is Todd.
No, Todd, not now.
A.K.A. Negative Camper. You know I've asked you here.
You must convince the villagers that I'm harmless.
That's exactly what I need you to do. Tonight, for your kind consideration, we're going to review the Monaco Grand Prix. But before doing, well, you actually know how we do that, right?
We watch one, then we talk about it. Then we watch one, then we talk about it. Come on, Todd.
That's exactly how we do race reviews. But to help me do that race review, I have to introduce my co-host tonight, which of course means...
Wrecked from out of the wasteland. He's bad, he's beautiful, he's crazy. It's...
Hello, everybody. This is Paul Charles, the International.
How you doing, Paul?
I'm all right.
Good.
Yeah, just surviving, my friend. Surviving.
Yes. Just hanging in there by the fingernails.
Yes. Monaco, Indy qualifying, and then life. It's just all kinds of stuff happening right now. The world has restarted, it seems to me.
Yeah, you got a lot going on. You know, we were just talking pre-show, and you got a bit of a full plate there, Tiger.
I do. Lots of things with fast cars running around. It's kind of crazy, but people have had worse. I know that. Trying to live the moment, but it's tough to balance all those plates right now, but we'll get through it.
So for a guy that is on a team that races an Aston Martin car, you had to be pretty happy with your boy's performance in Monaco.
I was happy. Yeah, I was happy with the strategy. I've obviously that team struggled quite a lot, and I was I was happy for the team to actually get something out of the season so far, and for the drivers to be able to do something with the car out there. So, which was surprising. Because Monaco, I didn't think was going to be a good one for them, but somehow they did it.
Yeah. Well, Paul and I are going to talk about the Monaco Grand Prix because that's what we do on race reviews. By the way, if you're listening to this podcast, we do record the video because people kept asking us to record the video and throw it on YouTube. So we do that. If you'd like to see us arm wave and the two talking
I spend hours in makeup. Hours.
Yeah.
I get up at 3 a.m. This doesn't come easy.
Right. Right. And look, we're all busy. I don't have time to do, big productions and everything. I hit the record button on Zoom and that's what you get. And
don't screw it up this time, Paul.
Yeah, right.
There is no editing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know the audio, we switched to Zoom and the audio is, slightly different, but that's just kind of the knock-on effect of trying to get the video and the audio and everything. So apologies.
I've listened to, because when you and Grace do it, sometimes I listen, doing the video and then listening to in the car on the podcast, I think it's pretty good, even.
I hope so.
Happy.
Yeah, I try to balance that out a little bit. But anyway, so you can go to our YouTube channel and watch that. So, all right, let's talk about Monaco. The Monaco Grand Prix, look, it's not a prolific passing race, but it can be impactful to the championship depending on who gets the setups right, who doesn't hit the wall, etc. I sort of liken this to a team or individual time trial at the Tour de France, where it's that those incremental skills and incremental times that can really upset the leaderboard. And Monaco can do that. Anything can happen at a track with such tight tolerances. And you and I have talked about this in the past, concentrating 100% focus for 78 laps with no safety car this weekend mentally is incredibly challenging when the slightest error, as Charles Leclerc could tell you on Saturday, the slightest misjudgment means you're out of the race and there's debris everywhere in a safety car or you're getting craned. This is not an easy track. And I absolutely love Monaco, regardless of the passing, because the impact it has in aggregate, as we've seen this weekend, on a championship.
It definitely turns some championships upside down, and it's a different discipline. Like, IndyCar has ovals, they have street courses. Even in IMSA, we do the same thing. We do street course racing. Every race is going to have its pluses and minuses for different cars. If we raced on the same track all the time, that one car would probably win all the time, right? So it shook it up a little bit. This is a chance for Red Bull maybe to make some gains on the juggernaut of Mercedes. From a driver's standpoint, from my standpoint, it's definitely, you just admire the concentration, the focus, and the speed of driving one of these things through these tight confines, lap after lap. As you said, there was no safety car to have a breath. You really had to be up on it for those 70 plus laps, and that is not an easy task. Sometimes you get in a rhythm, and so it's better not to stop. But I think Monaco is one of those tracks. It'd be nice just to have a breath for a couple of seconds and then be able to refocus, because as you said, it's just they really are taking it to a fine degree. They're not like giving themselves gobs of space on the exits of turns, etc. Else they're not going fast. So they really have to run that fine line, lap after lap, corner after corner. So even if there is no passing, it's still, I find, an intriguing race to watch.
Yeah, I do too. I like it for the strategy. I like it for the car setup, the radically different approach to car performance. It's track specific in the way that certain cars will behave, as we saw this weekend. We'll get into it when we get into the teams. But I like Monaco for all of those reasons, on top of the glamour and all that stuff. It's a beautiful place. But I love that track. I love watching those drivers drive. And you and I have talked in the past about getting that rhythm and that muscle memory and getting in the zone where it's almost tunnel vision. You're not even seeing anything beyond the racing line,
Right.
And it comes at you so fast at Monaco that just the slightest, we saw all weekend long guys taking too much of the Armco and ending their session, or like Charles Leclerc, Latifi. But then there was other drivers that were literally touching the side of the Armco with their tire.
I love to see when the Armco just kind of
Yeah.
bows in a little bit.
Bows in a little bit.
Oh man,
Yeah.
it's magic.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, driving around the street circuit like that, there's so many different visuals that you really have to minimize what you're actually intaking into your brain to get into that rhythm. And that's why it's not just about the car setup. The driver really has to work his way into the track. It's not that easy. You have to minimize the objects that you're using as reference points, so you get rid of the white noise that is just going to distract you.
Right.
And so that's really important. And it's not something you just jump in on lap one and get. Everything's a little bit different. So it really is quite a task to actually get a perfect lap down on a street circuit. So.
And remember several years ago when there was coming out of the Lowe's hairpin and the entry of Portier, which is one of my favorite corners, but they had that big martini billboard with the model, the American model. She was on there kind of with dirt on her face, and it was such a vivid, huge, it was a very beautiful woman, but it was this beautiful woman just staring at, and the drivers, they were so distracted by it, they had to remove that hoarding. Do you remember that?
No, I don't remember that.
They had to remove that ad because during the weekend the drivers kept looking at her and getting distracted. But you're right, those reference points, you've got to ignore all that distraction around you and get a tunnel with your reference points, and that's what you're focused on in that rhythm. And as you come down there getting ready to line up for Portier, you're looking up at this beautiful
I mean, it gets down
staring.
to the rivets on the Armco that are your visual reference points, and just but you have to, because you have to be so far ahead of the car to drive a car so fast around that kind of track.
And it's tough because the sight lines are very limited. You can't see through a lot of the apexes,
Right.
It's very, very difficult.
Yep.
So that's, if all the reasons, it typically has separated the real race drivers from the also rans. Very encouraged. I gotta be honest with you. Very encouraged that everyone drove 78 laps, 100% focused, didn't put it in the wall.
Yep.
No safety cars. I mean,
No.
there's rookies in there. Yuki never driven there. I mean, it's impressive.
Even Mazepan got round.
Yeah, Mazepan.
He probably had his best race of the
He did beat his teammate, albeit for attrition. But yeah.
Crazy.
Well, let's talk about the race. It ended up with Red Bull and Max Verstappen in P1, Sergio Perez in P2. Yes, I said Sergio Perez.
You like my face?
P4, you mean?
Like it?
I do.
You said
Sergio.
You just said P4. P2, I mean, it's P4.
Yeah. What did I say?
P2.
Oh, no. Verstappen P1, Perez P4.
There you go.
Yeah, right. Got it.
I know you said never correct me in the air, but
No, I said always correct me on the air. I'm terrible. Look, I just went to a state college. I'm not that smart. Trust me. All right. So Max, here's the interesting thing about Red Bull as I was going in, and it did impact my fantasy GP picks, wrongly, I might add, because I was overreacting. I know. I was overreacting horribly, because Max to me seemed like he was really struggling on Thursday. And I was wondering if he was going to be able to run. At that point, coming out of Thursday, I thought, I'm not even sure they've got the pace to run with Mercedes. And conversely, Ferrari, given Ferrari's pace on Thursday. And I thought, wow. And this is difficult because everyone had Red Bull pegged as the favorites at this track. And so they should have been. And so it ended up being that way. But I'm not entirely sure what the team did to get that car competitive. But come Saturday, he was gunning for pole, which he inherited due to Leclerc's misfortune, fortunately for Charles. Max took the lead, had a great start, but he did have wheel spin. Valtteri got a little better start, but despite that wheel spin, he got ahead in a very aggressive manner, got over in front, blocked Valtteri into that first corner, never really looked back at that point, had plenty of pace in hand to keep Carlos Sainz and Valtteri Bottas behind him. And even though I think Valtteri kind of pressed there a little bit, I think Max had plenty of pace in hand. I think he managed that race impeccably well. It was his first Monaco win. Max's win gives him the points lead in the championship. It also gives Red Bull the points lead in the championship for constructors. It's Honda's first win here since Senna in 1992, and the first time they've led the championship since 1991. So some big things happened with that win from Max, but seemingly very measured race, plenty of pace, did a fantastic job.
Yeah. Oh, Honda, what have you done? But yeah, absolutely. I mean, you got a great run. I think, the evolution of a car during a weekend can be different depending on what the team's attitude towards it. Obviously, going in, Red Bull should have been pretty confident. That's definitely a track that they usually excel at. But sometimes you work on different things of the car before you work on the pure speed. As long as feel you know the car well enough, you have other data points that you can run from, knowing that if this is this and this works like this, then when we try to add the speed, it'll come here. So you're usually looking for balance first. So you can come there and be a bit on the back foot, but I think it's that first day is really tough to judge or make a succinct point finger. They're struggling, they're not struggling, kind of thing. But that definitely balance is important, and getting your eye in the game. And as I said, I think they just worked their way into getting the car where it should have been in the first place. Hard to know where there were struggles, if there were struggles at all. But yeah, for sure, Max did a impeccable job. It's great, to be leading the race, and that allows you to really dictate the pace of the race and save your tires. You don't have to run behind anybody. So he could hold that pace back, that if anyone tried to do an undercut, he could just unleash himself too. Yeah. So I think it's a very confident position to be in for the whole race, really.
Well, in that case too, Paul, he could just measure the field, those that were trying undercuts versus overcuts, and he had the pace that he could just run a little longer and gap it and just get himself a gap. And really at that point, they were looking at Stroll or Vettel became the target for the gap. They didn't want to come back out behind Vettel, but he waited and his tires were working really well. So he ran longer, let them box, then it gave him. And the only person that he had a gap issue with is his own teammate, and that wasn't an issue.
Right. Exactly.
So, it worked out impeccably. Speaking of teammates, Sergio didn't have a great quali, but he did manage to run long on his soft compounds to overcut those around him, and it actually paid a lot of dividends. And then he took the battle to Lando Norris in the waning laps. Couldn't quite get around Norris because it is difficult to pass to Monaco, but it was a good fourth place given where he qualified at. Some good tactics and strategy by the team and good tire management by Sergio. Both the Red Bulls Bull seemed to not suffer with the graining that Ferrari did, suffer with the tire wear that Mercedes did. They were able to get the tires in that window, get the grip levels, and really it didn't come down to degradation. It was just tire wear, and there's not a lot of energy put in those tires at Monaco. So it allowed Sergio to take that overcut, gain those positions, and slot into fourth. A great result for the team.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, before Monaco, I said, Sergio's goal should be P2, right?
Yeah.
And sadly, on the grid and in the race, because this is a prime position to really maximize points for Red Bull. I think Ferrari threw a wrench in the works there, and didn't make it easy. He's still struggling with the qualifying, but in the race, the old Sergio comes into play, managing the tires, etc. I think some ways the trundling around at the beginning on the heavy fuel helps the overcut there, and I think teams are kind of pitting just because rather than they're really actually at the end of their tire life, and so once everyone's trundling around, they're not maximizing pace and making gaps where they should, that when they pit, that enables the guys behind to put down some good laps and make that overcut work.
Right. Yeah, and certainly, if you look at and if you're newer to Formula One, I don't want to patronize a lot of you veterans out there, but just if you're newer to Formula One, that we typically see the undercut more than we see overcut. And the reason for that is because when you run several laps on a tire, the tire starts to lose grip and starts to lose lap time. And so because those old tires, if you pit before your competitor and you come out in fresh tires and your out lap super quick and their in lap is not that quick because they've got worn tires, then you're going to undercut them. Conversely, the overcut in Monaco, the reason this kind of worked is because they waited, let your competitor pit first, but because it was so hard or difficult to get energy into those tires, their outlaps on fresh tires wasn't quicker than your in lap on worn tires, because the worn tires weren't that worn. They were in full heat cycle, still setting very competitive paces. So that's why the overcut worked in Monaco, whereas we typically see undercut because the tires are worn down and much slower. And in Monaco, they're not. They're just not generating that amount of energy. Is that a decent paraphrase of what?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a fine line, obviously, as we saw with the Vettel, Gasly, Hamilton battle. It is a fine line for being an advantage to a disadvantage, but it seemed like the overcut always ended up being an advantage here. We even saw with Lance Stroll, as long as he went on his tire, he still had good pace.
Yeah.
And his tires were very old, so, as Hamilton said, my tires were still good. I could have gone longer, but the team just chose to try and think that they could get some kind of track position made up by doing the undercut. And obviously we know that didn't work.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Ferrari, Charles Leclerc, DNS, Carlos Sainz, P2. To be honest, I'm not so sure that this couldn't have been a Ferrari front row on Saturday. Given their pace through Sector 2 in particular, 2 or 3 tenths up on Red Bull in Sector 2 was I don't think anyone saw that coming. And whether that would have held up during the race with the graining that Carlos ended up having, I don't know. That's all speculation, shoulda, woulda, coulda. But the point being is Ferrari entered this weekend, and I think it caught everybody off guard just how good this Ferrari was in Monaco when drag wasn't a factor, when sheer straight line pace and speed wasn't a factor. All of a sudden, Ferrari, boom, where are they strong? Slow speed corners and tight, twisty track.
Right. Unusual for Ferrari, but they got to try and make this speed up somehow, right? So I think what their ideology behind this year's car is very sound, because they can't change the engine that much. I know they've made some gains back in the engine, but they're not going to get it all the way back because they went a whole different avenue last year, which they got penalized for. So very handy car. It's a good handling car. It's a Red Bullish type of handling car. So that's very encouraging for them. And I agree. They could have had a front row. That would have been mighty impressive. But Charles's mistake had big ramifications for both himself and for his teammate, unfortunately.
Yeah. And certainly Carlos on that final run was up on the time in the first sector, you know. And so he was very disappointed not to have been able to do that. It's hard to get really mad at your own team or your own teammate for what happened with Charles, but I think Carlos really felt pole was on the cards there for him. And Ferrari on the front row would have been really good. And it would have been very difficult because of the lack of passing for Max to get around those two Ferraris. But as it is, Carlos did inherit second when Bottas retired, but he felt pole was in the car on the cards for him if it weren't for his teammates' crash. Regardless, I thought Carlos drove a great race. He pressured Max a few times, and he said, "Oh, what do we got to lose? Let's try to pressure him a little bit." But he did have graining, and then he went through the graining phase, came out of that, tried to push a little bit more, but didn't have the pace to catch Max. He came home in second place, making a dent certainly in the championship lead by McLaren. Just 2 points now separate Ferrari and McLaren in the Constructors' Championship. They entered knowing that, and they entered the weekend, and to be fair to myself, I guess, I'm still thinking Ferrari and McLaren, they're kind of, head-to-head in the best of the rest battle, and I wasn't expecting Ferrari. I thought they'd come into Monaco and slot in and around McLaren. Wasn't expecting them to be ahead of Mercedes and Red Bull. So, it caught me off guard, and I'm a Ferrari fan. So, that was interesting. So, a very good race by Carlos. He said he had the graining on his tires. He couldn't really get close enough to make a run at Max, but he clearly converted that quali pace into race pace. It was there, and he wanted to show the world that he had the pace to win this race. Unfortunately, he did not win that race, but otherwise, a very good weekend for Carlos. And I know he was down kind of after the race because of what happened. Didn't get pole. He felt like he could have won the race, so it was bittersweet. But my gosh, a second place is still a great result.
Yeah, no, great result. I mean, I think he's really gelling with this team. This is it's a good combination. The Charles and Carlos show, just very much like, he must be just a good guy to be a team player, because obviously he inserted himself in the McLaren and had the same kind of vibe coming out of him, that he's really maximizing the car, but not by doing it in any low-handed ways. He's pushing the team, and I think that combo is pretty powerful right now. And Carlos is a match for Charles Leclerc. I think that they're both very talented guys, and I think any weekend one could be above the other. So probably was disappointing from not to have the pole, but should be highly encouraged by the pace of that car and how the Ferrari package keeps moving forward.
Yeah. For Charles Leclerc, Saturday's crash ended as a did not start with a left drive shaft issue on the recon lap. Ferrari gambled on not changing the gearbox, and in hindsight, maybe that was correct, but not detecting the drive shaft issue was something they most likely didn't see. As in my mind, and I don't know, and Ferrari haven't released and had time to do an exhaustive thing. And I've listened to several people wax poetic and be critical of Ferrari and not critical of Ferrari. It doesn't really matter. Just my personal opinion on it is that if you can't put a load in the system, it's going to be difficult to sort of detect certain things, right? I think Matteo was quick to say, no, this is the left drive shaft. This wasn't the side to hit the wall and all that. Okay, but they're all connected to the diff. And I'm thinking, I don't know, you take the diff takes a big hit like that. Is it completely irrational to think that the shock wave on the right could have hit the diff, could have done something to the left drive shaft?
It was a big hit for sure.
It was. So, I don't know. Fair enough. If they want to say that it wasn't and it was completely unrelated, that's certainly their prerogative. But I think, there's a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking on this, Paul, of whether they should have changed the gearbox and taken the penalty. They gambled. They tried to field the car. It was not, ready. It was damaged. They should have detected. There's a lot of hindsight. Certainly Charles has bad luck at his home race, and that bad luck continued. And had he competed and finished in the points, well, Ferrari would have taken the points lead. So it is costly that he didn't start the race and finish in the top 10, taking points given where Carlos finished.
Yeah.
Is that a mistake on Ferrari's part, or is it proof that Ferrari aren't that concerned about McLaren and pretty damn confident of their program going forward to gamble on the gearbox not being changed, saying if he doesn't start, he doesn't start?
Well, I think the carrot of glory was
at
too
Monaco.
great for them resist.
Yeah.
I think, logically speaking, if you're thinking about a whole championship and you're saying, okay, well, what's the worst going to happen is we start P6, we're still, looking pretty good for a good points haul by both cars. Yes, we're probably not going to win Monaco, right? Then that's what you would have done. I mean, it was a big hit, and these things tend to have many ramifications throughout a car when you do a hit like that. But as I said, I think it was a 50-50 roll the dice kind of choice to not do it. And obviously it didn't pay off. If it had paid off, they would have been geniuses. I'm not saying it's like category 100%. They should have done it the other way, because you got to weigh up your options. I say they're going to have very few moments this year to win a Grand Prix. And they saw this, and that they weighed it over the glory of winning a race versus locking in more points to beat McLaren, because they knew Ricciardo was way back there.
Right.
So that you're going to score more points if you have both cars in the race and guaranteed in the race. So
right.
It rarely happens that something of that nature happens to the car, and it's easy, to diagnose everything that's in there, especially, as you say, they can't do a load on it. They can't really test it. So because you can't test, you're not really making a decision based on good data, I feel.
Right.
So that's why I probably would have led towards changing it, but I don't think, it's a complete donkey move for just going for glory and going for it sometimes.
Yeah. Hindsight's 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy for me to sit here in the comfort of my couch and make these, wax poetic on what Ferrari should or shouldn't do.
Yeah.
But having said that, the only thing that was running through my mind before they started the race, when the lead up in the pre-race show, they were talking about they didn't change the gearbox. They looked at it. It looked okay, those kind of things. And the thing I was thinking about in my mind was, given that Ferrari's pace at this particular track is so strong, what are the odds on the rest of the season of having this kind of big rejuvenation in pace? Because there's only one Monaco. You could argue maybe Hungary.
Yeah.
Where they're going to really be on par. And there's not many. Mm-hmm. So in that case, maybe it would be better to change the rear end of that car, take the penalty, and rely on your speed on this particular track and strategy of an overcut potentially to get him 2 Ferraris on the podium. That's what I was thinking, because I just don't know that they're going to have an opportunity at the Now, I could be wrong, but they act like they're not really focused on this year's car. They're pretty much focused on next year's car. So I'm thinking they're not going to have a lot of opportunities. Mm-hmm. So maximize this one, Yeah,
especially, as I said, they're really fighting McLaren, and McLaren only had one knife in the fight for this weekend. So they could have, scored a lot more.
Right. Mm-hmm. So anyway, all right. Let's talk about McLaren. Lando Norris P3, Daniel Ricciardo P12. Lando continued his terrific performance that he's showing in 21 by qualifying well, racing well, taking a podium while holding off Perez for several laps. Lando, like Pierre Gasly, in my mind, has completely turned himself into a hot property in Formula One. And no wonder McLaren just inked a brand new multi-year deal with him this weekend. That's the right move from Zach, because this kid has gone from, plucky teen, like plucky teen Max Verstappen. He's gone from plucky teen Twitch giggling and having fun playing games online to a serious race car driver. The kid is brilliantly talented and did a fantastic job of putting it in P3. He wasn't expecting to be on the podium this weekend, and it was a great result.
Yeah, no, a lot's been focused on on him over the 3 years. So it is interesting to see the progression in his maturity and in the car and out of the car, quite honestly. So and that focus, that change in ideology from him, being the kid eating Pop-Tarts and I think has made him a more formidable opponent to everybody. And yeah, it's a great move by Zach to snap him up. I'm not sure if there were other options out there for him. I think there would have been. So
I think there would have been too.
It was really good to keep him in there. I think, obviously McLaren are doing all the right things to make it attractive for him to stay in the stable.
Right. Because if you think about it, you got him, George Russell, Pierre Gasly, 3 pretty hot properties, I think, in Formula One, and 3 young guys to keep your eye on. In that sense, I think they're all
fun to watch and impressive to watch, I would say.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Not impressive to watch is the struggle Daniel Ricciardo's having. He says he'd wish he'd never came to Monaco. He said it was one to forget from him, but getting lapped by your teammate, that's a gut shot. Not good at all. Dan said there were a few laps on the hard tires where he was setting competitive times, but he felt like he was skating around to find grip. And he was just saying that the window for that car is so narrow, it's so difficult for him to find. There was a piece they ran on the pre-race show, an interview he did with Natalie, where he said that he was chatting with Carlos, and Carlos says, "Yeah, what do you think of the car? It's kind of weird, isn't it?" And Daniel was like, "Yeah, why didn't you tell me that this car is a real tiger to drive?"
Okay,
yeah.
I didn't see that. Huh?
Yeah, and it added some context for me because Dan said, "There's no way I'm a second or more slower than Lando.
Right.
There is no way that I'm off the pace that personally him."
Right.
And I tend to believe that.
I do believe it. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think he is.
Yep.
But I'm not sure what Dan's struggling with to get on top of this car with his driving style versus what the car demands. Lando is working that car within the parameters that it demands, and one might argue it's designed around Lando, and that's a fair statement. Very much like the Red Bull designed around Max, but it is difficult to see, whereas Carlos Sainz, maybe a testament to him, he has adapted much quicker to that Ferrari than what you're seeing Daniel Ricciardo or even Sergio Perez do.
Yeah, it's interesting that you're saying that. He said it's interesting because I don't think we've ever heard that the McLaren is difficult to drive.
That's the first time I've heard that.
Yeah. So that is interesting to know. I mean, I can't believe that the team would cater to Lando's idiosyncrasies in the full build and design of the car. I wouldn't think so. Because Carlos was able to get his head around it. I think it's just some way they made that car competitive, and maybe there are some little interesting things that the car has that just kind of rises up every now and again. So definitely something wrong. Daniel Ricciardo is not slower. I don't think he's slower than Lando Norris, but he is in that car, so that unfortunately test miles don't happen. Monaco's not a great track if you're not comfortable with the car to really get the most out of a car either, right? Because you need a little bit of room for error, and you can't really experiment too much at Monaco. And I think that obviously reared its ugly head for Dan, and brutal day for him. I mean, this is his track. He does really well here, so it really shows that there's a gap there that the McLaren team need to fill, because Ferrari, as you said, Sainz is getting his head around the Ferrari very quickly. They're double points takers right there. You can't let Dan flounder back there. You got to find a solution to that.
Yeah, and that's just it. It's not a case of favoring Lando. Zach and team have to figure out how to get Dan up there. This isn't Dan. Dan doesn't forget how to drive. Dan isn't a slow driver. There's nothing about Dan that's slow. Daniel's a wickedly fast driver. They got to figure out how to get him up in the points, or they're going to lose best of the rest of Ferrari, to your point, because Carlos is on top of it, and so is Charles Leclerc.
Yep.
So tough situation for McLaren to be in there. Could be a catalyst moment of the season if they don't get Dan up where he should be. So
Yeah.
very, very, very difficult. Let's talk about Aston Martin. Lance Stroll in P8, Sebastian Vettel in P5. Aston Martin had the answer when it came to strategy at just how impactful the overcut would be in Monaco. Yeah. So up front, kudos to Aston Martin, who entered this weekend with some really great strategy. They knew it. They started Lance on those hard tires. They ran him long enough to protect his gap, to hold his position when he boxed. He didn't lose a spot. And, you know, that was a testament to really Lance's pace on those tires, even as many laps it was on those tires, and the strategy that they used to get him all the way up into 8th and in the points. You know, he had a few excursions over the yellow curb down there. So he more than one. I mean, maybe 3 or 4 times. And I was just really worried.
Daddy's paying the crash damage on that.
I know. I was really worried that he was just ripping the bottom of that car off, you know. But even doing that, he had some good pace, and he was setting good times on those hard tires, and he executed and brought that car up to 8. So it was a good result for him.
Yeah. You know, as I alluded to earlier, the trundling around at the beginning was in his favor, right? Because he's on the harder tire, which isn't the quicker tire compared to the people, but they're not maximizing that tire grip right there, because they're just trying to make it go as long as they can. Right. So he's basically, you know, just trundling around too, and not having to really fight to stay on pace. And
to that point, Paul, nobody was worried of trying to win this race in the fastest time possible. It was just trying to finish this race in hold positions.
Yeah, hold positions, right.
And what you're talking about is that trundling. Nobody was gapping like you would normally see on road courses.
Right.
You know, and because of that, Lance just comfortably stayed in, no gaps, and he was great.
Yeah, just stay out of the aero of the other car in front, because unless you really think you can pressure and make a move, you know, stay 2 or 3 seconds back, and we saw those gaps great. And just keep your tires in good check. And as I said, you know, he really wasn't pushed that hard on the hards on pace, so it made it pretty easy for him. And really late in that run, he was still doing really competitive times once they released the hounds and the overcut was on, right? So and that's where he made it. I mean, when he got that 20-second gap to who did he make that gap to? Who was that? Giovinazzi, was it?
Was it Gio?
Or Ocon?
Ocon.
Yeah. So he got that gap just by pulling the trigger, you know, on the hard, which were that many laps in, and Ocon couldn't react to it, and he made that gap and got it done. So yeah, great job by the team for their strategy for sure, and by Lance for being patient, but then unleashing it and having the pace when he really needed to put it down.
Yeah, he did a good job. Even better job by his wily old teammate, Sebastian Vettel, who used the overcut to jump 2 places with a great move on Gasly to hold on to 5th place. It was Gasly and Lewis. I mean, you know, Gasly and Lewis, they boxed, and Gasly did the overcut, and he was coming out. He was, oh, this is going to be great. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Vettel comes out rolling up
what you know about rolling down?
I got it.
Yeah.
That was a great battle all the way up Saint-Devote and Massenet. That was great.
Yeah, unfortunately, the camera, whoever the director was, went to, that was just a disaster of a cut.
They cut away to like Lance running over chicane.
Yeah, the most exciting part of the weekend probably was that battle right there. And no, Vettel did a great job. He was aggressive. He had good pace over the weekend. I mean, he was a top 10 guy the whole time, which I said I wasn't expecting out of this car. Or out of him for sure. And but because he had that pace, that gave him, you know, the tool to fight with and the overcut, and he made it work and got a fantastic result out of it. He was forceful, and I'm sure, and Gasly, you know, said, well, you know, he had a word with him afterwards, but you know, I replayed it from the in-car stuff, and it was the move was on for sure, and Gasly could have tried it, but Gasly did a good job in being aggressive and looking for an option, but not being super stupid aggressive and taking them both out either. So it was an entertaining series of corners or series of 3 laps where they're all trying to make something happen. But Vettel came out on top, which was great.
Yeah, it was great. Great result for the team for sure. AlphaTauri, Pierre Gasly, speaking of Yuki Tsunoda P16. So Yuki had never driven in Monaco. So starting on the hards, qualified 16, starting on the hards, running the longest first stint of anyone. That's a tall order for a rookie. But ultimately, he started in 16th. He finished there. That's something that I guess
not that great.
it's at the end of the day, he's going to have to work on his Saturday qualifying. When you're qualifying and struggling, and I think you could have some patience for him. He's never driven Monaco, and that's a beast unto its own. So I think you've got some patience there with him for that, for sure. But qualifying, I think Yuki came on strong at the beginning, F-bombed his way through about the next 2 or 3 races, and then figured out.
We love Yuki.
Yeah.
He's so cute.
And then figured out pretty damn quick, wow, this is the majors, and this isn't easy. And I think it's starting to show that it can consume rookies pretty quick.
Yeah, hopefully it will shut him up a little bit, because
I think a little humbling is happening.
Yeah, because I think obviously Gasly is a great benchmark for the car, and he's doing a phenomenal job and super competitive. And you cannot blame it on the team or the strategy or anything like that. He's got to look inside himself for doing this. AlphaTauri took a risk bringing him on. Obviously a talented driver, but they had some other drivers in the wings that could have been a lot more solid for scoring points every week. So hopefully it pays off. But it's
could have called up Jaime Alguersuari again.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
This Monaco track is so unlike anything he's ever driven back in Japan. So very, very culture shock for him, I'm sure.
Yeah, tough race for him. But Pierre, as you said, did a great job representing the true pace of the car. It handled well. He had another great race scoring points in his 4th race in a row. He scored points. He kept Lewis Hamilton behind him for the majority of the race, and everyone will say that's not an easy task to do. But he did manage to do that. He did struggle on the hards, though. He said that his battle with Seb it was down to mere millimeters up the hill to Casino Square. He said had he pushed it, they'd both ended up in the ocean. But he said that it was fair, though. He said, it was a fair battle and he enjoyed it. And he and Seb talked about it afterwards. It was the team's best result season so far. And I just don't think you can say enough of what Pierre's doing in that car and how he's reversed his career. I thought he looked terrific this weekend.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, I mean, he's consistently showing himself. I'm surprised this is their best result, quite honestly. But it's a tough field out there for sure. But AlphaTauri is going to be a bit behind in the constructors championships because of his teammate.
Yuki,
but for his individual pace and future, I think he's doing nothing wrong and hurting nothing by how he's behaving out there on track. And when he's putting the laps down, he's qualifying great and he's racing really well too.
Right. All right. Well, here we are, Paul.
Get in there, Lewis. Get down.
Oh, boy. Talking about Mercedes.
The Emperor is not happy.
No, the Emperor is not happy. Lewis Hamilton down at P7. He qualified, started P7, finished P7. Valtteri Bottas at D and F. Mercedes is known for incredible race strategy. Just look at the last race in Spain or at Imola. However, I wonder if calling strategy up front is easier than calling strategy when your car's down in 7th place. It's a little different, and so Lewis struggled all weekend long and was very upset with the team strategy, very upset with the team, upset with strategy, upset with the car. He said he had nothing to learn out of the weekend, but the team did.
Okay. Ooh, ouch.
Yeah, I saw that video.
Oof.
Okay, look, let's be fair here. That's a harsh thing to say. But let's be honest, that's a lot of emotion and frustration coming out of Lewis. And I get his point. Those are things probably best left unsaid, but he's pissed. And I get it. A lot of people were, slating him on social media for saying that. And, because everyone can learn from a weekend, even him. I think if his, now that things have cooled down, if you asked him, I think he would say, of course, we all have something to learn from the weekend. So, having said that, very difficult. He struggled all weekend long, was upset, was frustrated. I do wonder if we're starting to see a little bit of the fractures in this relationship with the team, with some of the
you think
things.
the early negotiations he wants to get out of the way aren't going the way he likes them again?
Maybe, yeah, maybe not. I don't know. I know he's wanting to get a deal signed, but he did manage to get the fast lap, but the undercut attempt on Gasly didn't work, and in the process of boxing early, he lost 2 places to the overcut, which really set him off. Was not happy. He said, "Wait, I could have managed the tires. I had managed the tires. The tires are fine. Why are you doing this?" So, didn't agree with the strategy. Now, on the other side of that coin, the team were having tire wear issues, and they knew that. So it wasn't an option. The team was trying to make the best strategy call with the cards they had in their hand, and it just didn't work. And to be fair, Mercedes has never really focused on Monaco. Yes, they've won there, but that was when they were even more dominant than they are now. They didn't enter this weekend as the favorite. Red Bull did. So, can you be too harsh on Mercedes? Maybe you can. But I think all in all, Lewis just could not get this car hooked up the way he wanted it with the tire wear they were experiencing, whereas Valtteri could.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to design a car to win a world championship, Monaco is going to be right at the bottom.
It's the outlier.
Yeah, it's just not going to be an important factor. And you'll just say, well, whatever happens at Monaco happens at Monaco. But the car's still a competitive car, so it's not going to be at the back of the pack, right?
Right.
Lewis is obviously not used to floundering back there or having a difficult car to drive or not having, the best strategy. As you say, it's easy to run a good strategy if you're starting up front, right? So, and it was fine margins, right? I mean, we saw it. I mean, it was nose to tail. If 1 second was different, Lewis would have been up in 5th at that point, and he would have been, cugging everyone at the end of the race. So I don't think they made an atrocious call. I think he was Monday morning quarterbacking it a little bit from inside the car, but that's the way he does it, So, it's a bit unfortunate to unleash that, considering how much the team and the car have given him over the years. I think, I get that you can be a little emotional, a little angry at how that single race going, but the big picture wise, I'm a little disappointed that he would go down that route. But there's probably is something else going on behind the scenes that's frustrating him as well.
I wonder, because he said there's no reason they should perform this way with the experience this team has, and I don't know. I wonder. This is being pretty critical of the team, and that's typically. It's one thing for him to disagree with Bono on a strategy during the race or to get chippy with Bono or whatever. That's just emotions and in the moment, and you can discount a lot of that crap. But coming out and pretty much leveling off at the team is typically not something he's done. With this team, with any frequency. And I'm just kind of curious about that. Valtteri had a better weekend going, but his luck ran out. It seems like if there's going to be bad luck at Mercedes, it will go out of its way to hunt down and rest on the shoulders of Valtteri Bottas. His luck ran out during the pit stop with a cross-threaded wheel nut that they couldn't change. They could not get it off the wheel. The car actually had to leave Monaco with the wheel on, still couldn't get it off, and said that they wouldn't going to be able to get it off until they got back.
That's crazy.
Back into the UK. Valtteri said it's weird. He's never had a DNF while he was sitting in the pits, so that was a little strange for him. But I'm curious, Paul, because they it's not just a wheel nut. I mean, the technology that goes in to the wheel, the hub, the nut to secure it and make sure it doesn't come off during the race, because there's huge penalties for that. And I'm just curious what happened there, if it was user error, if it was wheel nut error, drill error. I don't know what it would have been, but it was weird that they could not get it off. We've seen cross threads before but they stripped the entire hub of the nut is weird.
Yeah, well, it's weird because it was the first tire that was on the car. Because then you have, when you're preparing the car for the race, you have a lot of time to make sure the wheel's on properly, turn the nut on, make sure it's done right. It's difficult to me to imagine that it was cross-threaded for the start of the race, because it had to have been if they couldn't get it off.
Right.
And then when they went to get it off, because it's just kind of stuck there, the little splines that kind of line up to get the deal off just kind of shear themselves off, and then there's nothing to grab a hold of after that point. So it's really weird for me that it would make sense if it was like a second tire change. You do a tire stop in 2.5 seconds, you can definitely cross thread a wheel nut without thinking about it. But their tire and wheel, they had plenty of time on the pre-race to get that on and make sure everything's torqued down right and everything. So surprising that's what the issue was. But yeah, there's a lot of power goes into those guns, and yeah, you just rip those little splines off that kind of fit over the nut, and that was all all she wrote.
Yeah, so brutal.
They're gonna have to cut that wheel off, take the whole suspension off. It's gonna be quite an ordeal, I guess.
Gonna have to get one of those grinder, and cut the nut and pry it off of the hub.
Well, all the guys are gonna go, oh, it was metric. Ah.
Who brought the imperial standard to what? Oh boy, brutal weekend for Mercedes. Damage limitation. They lose the lead in the Constructors' Championship. They lose the lead in the Drivers' Championship, and they head next to a circuit that they should dominate at. So not all is lost.
The one thing about Bottas is I thought he had a really good weekend. He was fast.
He did.
He was faster than Lewis, and he was going to have a good race. I thought it was pretty impressive. I didn't. You don't expect that out of him and Monaco. They don't kind of match up what tracks he's usually good at. So
yeah, that's a good point. And I feel like he also, he had to measure Lewis. He got the heat cycle on the tires where Lewis struggled with the balance and getting the tires to work. Valtteri did a better job of that. And I think he could pressure Max a little bit. I think Max had an answer for whatever he tried to do, but I think a square P2 was in the cards.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So unfortunate. Alpine, is that where we are now? It is.
Yeah.
Fernando Alonso, P13, Esteban Ocon, P9. Esteban finished 9th again, and he did so by running the mediums in his second stint, and that wasn't easy to do given the pressure he had from behind. So another good result from Esteban Ocon. You and I have been a little critical of Esteban, certainly last year. We're not seeing him. Where is he? Where was the Esteban that we saw with Perez and the fight and all that? We didn't see it. Now he's starting to show up, and I think he had a good weekend. Alpine, admittedly, they said we couldn't get the tires to work and those kind of things. So getting in the points was a good result for Esteban anyway.
Yeah, I hate that thing. They just can't get the tires to work because I still don't like this whole theory. Have the very thin margins for tire temperatures and everything. Where it's not just whoever's driving well that weekend does well. You have to drive well, yes, but then you have to drive well, but then you've got to think of all the pressures and temperatures and everything like that, and it's kind of a part and parcel of racing to a degree. But it seems with the Pirellis it's still a bit too big of a percentage to me, really.
I agree.
Where they can be that far off. But Ocon's being very consistent and getting his nose in the top 10 pretty much. So that is good for Alpine. They just have to learn how to switch Alonso on, because he's back to the tire thing. It seems like that's the biggest hassle for him, is to get his head around the tire. And as I said, it's a frustrating thing to hear, because should that be a part of it? Tire management's always a part of it, but there shouldn't be this narrow window that just puts somebody out to lunch, even with the talent that Alonso has.
I'm all for tire management. I've never been a fan of the high degradation tires in this narrow window, and some luck into it, track specific, chassis specific, and it's your weekend to do well, and the tires come on song, and you got the setup, and it's all this mind game. All of those machinations and complications and details happen behind the scenes. Fans at homes don't see any of it.
Right. And someone could look like they're just a bad driver, and really it's just
It's
Their
a moot
tires
point.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, for the teams and the engineering wonks and the mechanics and the strategists, it's a big fight between them, and they all have their inner, we put it on them, and they couldn't get. And I'm sure that makes a lot of sense, and it's fun for them. I'm just telling you, as a fan at home, you don't see any of that crap.
Right.
We don't see any of it. We don't know. What's Alonso's problem? I don't know. It's the tires. It's the tire window, and they can't get it. What the hell does that mean to me? Well, there's this narrow window where the tire has a performance and what the hell does that mean?
Yeah.
It's Fernando frickin' Alonso. He should be up there in the points. Same for Lewis.
Agreed.
This weekend he couldn't get his tires. It's Lewis effing Hamilton. And so I hate this crap.
Yeah, the tire should be just there to achieve the goal of the cars. They shouldn't be a key player.
That's right. If you and I are racing, Paul, and we're on tires, and I drive and abuse my tires trying to pass you or get around you or stay ahead of you, then that's on me, because that's tire management, and I abused them and I overheated them or whatever. But making it this mysterious window trickery, it's just, I hate it.
Yeah.
All right, I'm off my soapbox. Anyway, Fernando tried the medium soft strategy, was surprised that they put reds on. He was like, whoa, you put softs on the car, but he said it was actually the right call. The tire performed well. Regardless, chances that the hard may have been a better call for him. I don't know. It seemed like it was for other teams. So I don't know if it would have been better if he'd have been on the hards. But he started 17th, finished 13th. So he made forward progress, but it's not what the team needs or what the team expects. And very much like Daniel Ricciardo, this team needs to get on top of exploiting a talent such as Fernando Alonso, or in McLaren's case, Daniel Ricciardo. They're both too good to be languishing back there.
Absolutely. Agreed.
Yep. Alfa Romeo, Kimi Räikkönen P11, Antonio Giovinazzi P10 Ferrari powered team looked good in practice, managed to continue that pace during the race, with Antonio doing a very handy job at P10 in the first points of the year for the team. Antonio did a really good job in Monaco, and I know everyone's talking about all the other drivers, and I don't want to overplay this, but Antonio's doing pretty damn well this year. He's beating Kimi. He's looking quick. He's in a car that doesn't have a whole lot of hopes and dreams. So for him to get up in the points, look damned handy in Monaco, which is not easy. I think Antonio is really trying to turn his career around, his season around. And to be honest with you, I think he's doing it.
Yeah, well, he needs to, right? We said we were surprised he was back this year.
I was.
But so I think they've given him a big opportunity, probably one more year that I wouldn't have given him. And he needs to make the most of it. We probably think Kimi's probably moving on, and maybe Schumacher's coming over. They could wholesale change the team if they want to, but so he's got to make a story about him, why he should be the other guy. And so far this year, I think he's doing enough where it would be the easy choice for him, right? Press the easy button. And if he's performing, can get points and show well in the race when the Alfa Romeo is performing well, which it did this weekend. I think they were better than Ocon. I think they could have clamored both of them in the points somehow. Didn't quite work out for them, but I think it was a better car than it was. In around 10th and 11th, maybe it was the 9th and 10th. Not a big deal. But,
right.
It still was better than they've shown before. So I think, Giovinazzi is doing a good job. If he keeps it up, I think he's in a solid place to keep his drive.
Yeah, it depends on what Ferrari wants to do with any of their other junior drivers, right?
Right.
And what his future is there. But I think it is sort of last chance saloon, and he's delivering, I think, this year. Kimi made up a few places. Hard to pass at Monaco, as we've mentioned, and everyone else has said a billion times. But any marginal pace advantage one might have is not always easy to capitalize on, and 11th was the best he could manage, basically. He said it's, in Kimi fashion, it kind of is what it is. All right, down to Williams. We have George Russell in P14, Nicholas Latifi in P15. It was the team's 750th race, Paul.
Not the most memorable.
And that resulted basically in a battle between the two teammates at the back of the grid for most of the day.
Yes, it did. Yeah, I thought Russell had
Ooh.
something. He was
I did
once
too.
again. They seem to be okay in qualifying. At least Russell
Yeah.
can get something out of it, and Latifi's had a good qualifying session
Yep.
too. Like one of the races, I think it was a Mola. Anyway, but so the car is fairly good on a single lap, but it just doesn't have race pace, and they just fall backwards, don't they?
Right. Yeah, they do. Well, Nick did manage to keep Yuki behind him, so there's that.
There is that. Before you could hear him swearing at him. Around.
Right.
Slow corners.
Right.
Yeah.
So, all right, down to Haas, F1, Mick Schumacher in P18, Nikita Mazepin
I want it now! What's the matter with those twats down there?
in P17. Yes, ahead of young Mick Schumacher. Mick stuffed his teammate in the hairpin early on with a good passing move at Monaco, of all places, which I have to tell you, that had earmarks of his old man, didn't it?
Yeah.
Punching it down the inside of the hairpin. It's something you would have seen Michael do back in the day. So I thought it was a great move putting on Nikita. It was like, oh, I following this turd around.
No, that's good inspiration to do that, by the way.
Yeah.
If I finish behind this guy,
yeah,
that is not a good race.
that's exactly right. So it was a good move. Now, Nikita did get around Mick and beat him, but Mick was struggling with fuel pressure issues, so he had a loss of power, and he let Nikita around because he just had that loss of power. Here is what Gunther said. Gunther, after the race, said,
Hey, what happened?
no, he didn't. He actually, he said, the guys learned a lot about Monaco. So
Yeah.
there's that.
Good places to eat. What's the
Yeah.
best view? Yeah.
Is it the
Yeah.
tip top? I don't know.
The best martini in town.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go.
Stay away from it, Massipan. No, what are you gonna say about these guys? You know,
I
they're
don't
basically they're just showing up. They're filling the field right now, and Schumacher's
Yeah.
making the best of it for sure. But that's all they're doing.
It's almost like just kind of a world tour for these two young drivers to drive cars around fun tracks.
Right. An experiential team.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's really strange.
Yeah.
All right, let's hand out some awards. First award of the race is Move of the Race. All right, Paul. You and I were the same on this. Samey.
We are the same. Yeah, it had to be the Vettel
Yes.
overcut and the fight between those threes to make that overcut work. It was
right.
it was such narrow margins.
So
but
narrow.
Vettel's been a donkey for a while,
Yes.
more often than not for me, and so I think he's due a run of the race. I think that was good. Yeah.
That's exactly right. He came out and just boom. Yeah, elbows out, man.
Yeah.
Up that hill, made that car
No reason
wide.
not to. Yeah.
Yeah, and kept Gasly and Lewis behind him. It was a great move. All right, next award is Donkey of the Race.
We'll do it right!
Okay.
That sounded like the Mercedes air gun on the
It
Bottas's side.
It's a shame that's what the cars used to sound like. Now it sounds like a wheel gun.
Yeah. Donkey of the race has to be David Coulthard for me. That interview, the second most awkward interview in
It was
Formula One.
horrible.
Yeah, I don't know. What was the other guy that they interviewed one other time? But yeah, hey Max, how's your race? Oh, there's Serena. Let's bring her in. Do you know Serena, Max?
No.
No, I don't. Okay, well, Serena, got any tips for Max? Nope, I don't really know why you're talking to me, and no, neither does anybody else. So,
What the hell?
I have no idea what the hell they were thinking.
painful to watch. Yes.
I mean, they have other celebrities at races, and they don't drag them in for the post-race podium interview.
Yeah. Hey, Elton John, come on, come sing
Yeah.
Max's song.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, why would you drag Serena in for an interview, post-race podium interview,
Yeah.
and ask her what advice she has for Matt? And then she's like, it was like, you're a multi-champion, Serena. You got any advice for? Well, he's not really a champion yet, but it's like a race winner. It's like, it was just so awkward.
Well,
and
maybe
weird.
Max should, show up to Wimbledon, and then, I don't know.
Yeah.
She's standing there with the big dish, and then pulls it down. Serena, let's bring Max in. Max, what do
That's
you
just
think?
it.
How do you think Serena could like improve her lob? You know, it's like,
Yeah. That's just
don't
it.
mix sports,
If you
man.
wondered how strange that is exactly. If you just in your mind imagine Wimbledon, imagine Serena out there winning Wimbledon, holding up the trophy, and they bring Max Verstappen out because he happened to be there, and they bring Max Verstappen out on the court. And Max, what'd you think about the match? Any advice for her forehand? No, that is how weird that is.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, what the hell were they thinking? I agree with you. All right. My donkey goes to Mercedes. Bad weekend.
Yeah, definitely.
Bad weekend. Bad attitudes. Bad comments to the press. Bad all the way around. Just not.
Not good enough, damn it! Not good enough.
Not good enough. I would imagine Toto's going to have some stern words. All right. Final award of the race is Drive of the Race.
Yesterday, Lewis.
Yes. All right, Paul.
Yes, I'm giving it to Vettel.
Yeah, good
Giving
call.
him drive the race. I think execution is always a big thing for me.
Yep.
When strategy is correct and fighting with people and not taking himself out, that's a plus for him.
Right.
So Vettel. I loved his weekend. He was on pace all weekend, and he executed really well and went above and beyond and got a better result than you'd expect. So good job.
It was a great weekend.
Sebastian.
I gave it to Lando. I think Lando had a great race. I expected Max to do what Max is doing.
Yeah.
It's hard for me not to give Max drive the race. It is a fabulous race, and he did an impeccable job. But I kind of expect that of Max.
Yeah.
What I wasn't expecting is Lando to claw that McLaren up on the podium, and I think that was a great result for him. Great result for the team. And if that car is truly that difficult to drive, as evidenced by one Daniel Ricciardo, then Lando did a great job of doing that. So.
Vettel must have been on good form this weekend too, because his comment about either I'm very emotional right now or there's something in my eye.
Or my eye's bleeding.
Yeah.
What?
I thought that was great.
It was like,
either I'm very emotional.
I don't know what it meant.
I just laughed.
Yeah.
He's a funny guy.
He's a hoot. All right, let's do some mailbag.
You've got mail.
First up, Fabio asks, gents, 2 questions for both of you. Number one, now that we have a doubleheader at Austria, would this be a better option for trying the sprint races so they can be compared?
I don't think so. I don't think we nearly need it to compare. I think it either works or it doesn't, right? I mean, it'll be interesting, I guess. I mean, there's no reason why that wouldn't be a good idea.
Yeah.
You are. But I'm like flatline on that one. I think the experiment either works or it doesn't, and it's got to work everywhere. So what? Just throw it out there and let it work. But yes, for comparison's sake, maybe that's a good thing. But obviously, they're not going to change that, are they?
No, but I don't know that they'd want to do that, Fabio, because if it works, it works. But if it doesn't, and you've got direct comparisons with removed variables, and it shows that it really doesn't work that great, they'd be pretty much exposed on the sprint race thing.
And it's still a variable anyway, because it's track dependent whether that whole scenario wins anyway, right? It's not going to work at Monaco. So there's some tracks that more passing is allowed more freely. Right. That's where it's really going to work.
Right. Good question. Second part, with the low profile tires coming in next year, how will this affect the grip and cornering speed of the cars?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think from what I've understood from people like Newey and things like that, they feel like it's going to put them behind. But as we know with Formula One, they'll eventually make up that and then go ahead, right? Because they're going to have a lot to learn, because the Formula One car has been on that tire profile for so long that all the engineering and theory behind it is well known, and they have the data and steps to back it up and understand how things evolve. This is going to be a little different for them. So they're definitely going to be at a lower range initially, depending on what kind of tire Pirelli give them, because Pirelli could just give them a grippier tire in the end to make up for that deficit. But ultimately, it's going to be a slower tire or engineering profile at the beginning. But I think they'll get a head around it pretty quick, as they always do.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because it all gauges ride height and chassis and aero.
Yeah, I mean,
and
they've got to
it's-
have so much to work within the car to make that work, right? And so it's
Right.
going to take a while to get there. So it's not that the intrinsic engineering of a bigger wheel with a smaller profile is worse. It's just that you have to have so
Right.
many other things change to maximize that tire.
Right, right. And you guys do a good job of using it.
Yes, yeah, we do,
Yeah.
do, and it's a constant engineering exercise is maximizing that tire,
Mhm.
and knowing. And as a long time ago, I did the life of a tire, right? A tire is organic. It has a profile and it follows, and every tire is different, and you just have to find where that fine-tuned moment is. And sometimes you can find it for a lap, sometimes you can find it for a stint, and yeah, it's all based around the only thing that touches the ground is the rubber, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a very super important thing for
And you
engineers
guys
to-
are constantly, even that low profile, bigger tire, you guys are constantly working the toe angle and how much air pressure and how much slip angle and how much slip that car's giving you in the corners. and then, sometimes slip is good. Sometimes it starts wearing the tire too much.
Yeah.
And,
Yep.
you guys have to battle that every weekend.
always. And yeah, and every weekend, every track, every surface is different. So
Mhm.
it's not just like you learned it here and then you just go and move it on
Right.
to the next track. It's all different. How you want the high speed corners, how do you want the car to feel? Low speed, do you want low speed traction, do you want corner out, corner in? Every track demands different things from what you want the car to be balanced at.
Right. Good question.
Yes.
All right. Next, Andy asks, question for Paul. Just you,
Okay.
Paul.
Okay.
It's all on you, buddy. When I was a kid, this is Andy.
Mhm.
He says, when I was a kid, my parents gave me many tips of how to watch football on TV. Don't just focus on the ball, even if the camera does. Learn the tracks down your head.
Yeah.
Keep an eye on the chains. The announcers are often wrong and like to double down on mistakes. Mute the commercials, etc.
Okay. Very nice. Nice
All
tips.
very good.
Mhm.
All very good tips. What advice, tips, tricks would you give to someone watching F1 or racing in general?
Formula One is harder now because so many things are automatic. With the gearboxes, when you could see someone struggle when they're changing in the braking areas of the manual gearbox, etc. So the details are much finer. They're easier actually to see from outside the car than they are inside the car, which predominantly we're looking from the inside of the car, right? When we're not actually at the racetrack. I know Grace always goes back on it, when we're walking around Coda, we can physically see, we sit at a corner for 5 laps and see the different attitudes of the car with the different lines the drivers are taking. You listen for throttle application, where the brakes are coming on, when they're coming off the brake. So from a seat watching it on TV, you got to go inside the car and just listen for where the brake's coming on, how much throttle application they're able to give at certain points in the corner, when do they get to full throttle. Note the steering input. Are they adding steering after the apex? Are they kind of working the wheel a little bit? I hate the seesawing thing, because that just means like people are just arbitrarily just yanking at their wheel, but they're chasing the rear of the car when they're doing it. They're trying to counterbalance the rear slipping out, and so they're trying to counter that. So I call it chasing the rear end rather than seesawing the wheel, right? So see how much input the drivers are putting on the entry of the corner and on the exit of the corner, where the throttle application is coming in, and when they get to full throttle is very, very important. And where they're braking, obviously in the braking zones, but it is a lot easier when you're at the track to see the differentials in the cars, because you see, how they're on a fuel load, and you're sitting there at a corner seeing one car after the next. On TV, it's a little harder to get that spectrum,
Right.
of comparison, so to speak.
And that's the one thing I learned when you and I went to the races, is when we were standing at the corners. And you can see this on TV and you can hear it too. But when you're watching the corners and when you see the throttle application at the apex, the earlier, and you were showing me, and we could watch those cars go through, the earlier that the driver can get on the throttle out of the apex means that his wheel is straighter and not turned as much. So they're going to apply throttle as that wheel is straightened, because if you apply throttle in full lock, your ass end is going around.
Or the front end is going
Or
away.
the front end. Or the front end's going to go
One
away.
end's going away.
One end's going somewhere. So what you were showing me, and we saw this at COTA, was that the earlier they can get the throttle applied out of the corner means the straighter their wheel is, meaning the better handling that car is, or the better rotation they got into that turn. And you can actually see that now on the onboards when you watch Formula One. And so those cars that are on throttle earlier out of the corner, typically the cars that are handling better and quicker.
Yeah, and remember the S's also. Remember we were looking at how deep everyone could go into the S's before they actually literally had to brake and downshift, and that was also a balance of cooler entry for someone. I was just reading Motorsport magazine, actually. I don't know if did you read it, where they were talking about Hamilton and Schumacher, and it was really interesting because I remember observing Schumacher way back when, and the key to Schumacher's speed was how he could hold so much speed on the entry to the corner, and it was visually apparent when I used to see him up close in real life. And it was interesting to hear Eddie Irvine, who was his teammate for a couple of years, talk about that was his bag. He said, no one could do it. He said, I couldn't do it. He would just somehow get so much entry speed in, fix it in the middle, and then get out of the corner well enough that it was a net gain, right? But his key was keeping the car balanced, keeping it on the edge, all the way in there. So it's not just about how you get out of the corner, it's really how balanced and how much entry speed you can get in there without sacrificing everything at the apex and out. And that's where Hamilton actually does a really good job also. Yeah.
And it's always interesting when they show those brake, traces and how he enters the corner, late braking or braking a little earlier, but on throttle earlier versus someone who might even be later braker, but not on the throttle earlier.
Exactly. It's sometimes it is. The later brake can actually be because you brake, I know when I started racing, I was like, all I want to do is be the last person to brake, right? Yeah. But then you're standing the car on its nose, and then you're overslowing the car at that point where you got to get it turned. But the real, you're on a knife edge into the corner is really where the men from the boys are separated and the girls are separated. It's pretty cool stuff. And sometimes you look at in-car cameras, you're like, oh man. If only I could do that. Yeah.
The other thing I watch for, Andy, too, is when they do the onboards is to always look through the apex. So good point. You're looking beyond the apex. Don't just look at the tarmac right in front with the car.
Where the front wheels are.
Where the front wheels are or whatever, because that's already past you. It's looking down through the apex and seeing what's coming, and then you start to get an idea of their attitude toward those corners and how quick they are or aren't in those corners.
Look where they're looking.
Look where they're looking, They got
to look 2 seconds ahead, else they're behind the car. They're definitely not looking at their front tires, I promise you that. They can't even see them.
No. So, it's good. Anyway, good question, though. Good tips.
Great question.
All right. Well, that does it for this Race Review podcast. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to stop by the website, theparcfermé.com. Share your opinions. Do it with quorum and civility. As always, a huge thank you to our Patreon supporters, because we would not and could not do this podcast without you. And I am very grateful for your support and help. You can support us by going to theparcfermé.com. On the right-hand side, it says support us by Patreon, and you can click on that and support us as little as $1 a month.
And if you are a Patreon member, that allows you to take part in the Fantasy GP group, right?
That's right.
That is a fight.
That is a fight. You and I are right there.
2 points, just like Ferrari and McLaren.
That's right. That's right.
I scored the most points this week, which has never happened, so I'm pretty happy about that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I'm in the top 10 again, baby.
Yeah, I'm 7th, you're 8th.
Yeah. But it's fun. It's fun. There's a lot of people on there, but happy to have other people join. And
absolutely. So, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, that does it until the next time when we come back and talk about racing all over again. Paul, thanks so much for unpacking the Monaco Grand Prix, and we will see you for the Baku Grand Prix race review. Until that time, this is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Camber, saying so long.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.